very much. Good afternoon, Columbus.
Good afternoon.
This is a first. I mean, this is not the first time I've done this. Can I take this out?
You're Patrick Stewart, you can do anything.
Whatever you want. That's the only reason I asked that question. Good, there we are. First time in Columbus. Not the first time in Ohio, however. I have actually worked in this fair state. I was a visiting artist in residence and indeed performer at Oberlin College. Music students, faculty. You work in the bar. You grew up in Oberlin? Dry town. Six weeks I was there. What is the name of that bar just outside the city limits? What? Yeah, that's it. Saved my life. Forgive the coffee, but it was brought to me, and I hate waste. That's how I was brought up. Unless somebody here would like it, but no, it's unhealthy. Given the time of day and it's really bad to be late arrivals. It is absolutely essential that you be made to feel as uncomfortable as possible. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now? 10? Oh, okay. Then I'll let it go. Yes, I'm so happy to see so many of you here, given what is scheduled to occur at 3:30 this afternoon. Go, you Buckeyes! What is the matter with you people? You're all here because you don't watch football.
Sorry.
You hate football. Don't say that. Oh, thank you. So it was a choice you made. I remember you. I know who you are, and I think your name is. Oh Lord, you see if I get it wrong. This is going to be ghastly. Will you forgive me if I get it wrong? Sarah. You see, it's still firing up there a little bit, here and there. It was like that, you know. Thank you very much. That's lovely to hear you say that. So, big game this afternoon, and I say this with a little bitterness because when I left my hotel at 10:30 this morning, my soccer team in England were 1 goal up, which in fact, if the whole league games had ended, they were at 10:30 this morning, i.e. 3:30 in the UK, my team would have been #1 in the championship. However, my son, lovely man, some of you may have met him and seen him, he does these events with me occasionally. If you want to see both of us together, come to New Orleans the last weekend in November. He called me with the happy news that although we were 1-0 up, we lost 3-2. Thank you, Daniel. That really made my day. As I said, first time in Columbus. I have a very, very comfortable hotel suite. I mean, very comfortable. I think someone actually referred to it as the presidential suite, which explains one thing about this suite. that although there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 windows in this suite, none of them look out onto anything but brick walls and blank windows. So I guess in a sense for a presidential suite that's kind of perfect, except you've got to cover all the windows, haven't you? But it means that you have to have the lights on all the time. But through a chink in the buildings, I could see there was blue sky at about 7:30 this morning. So I knew that if I spent the next 3 hours in that room, I would go crazy. So I went out for a walk, and I walked for, I don't know, 30 minutes, maybe a little more. Beautiful morning, gorgeous, temperature perfect. I have just come back from filming in Israel for 4 weeks, where daily the temperature was in the low 100s. And it was pretty brutal, so this was perfect. And what an unusual town. It's so open. If I wanted to be unpleasant and critical, I would say the town was unfinished. But that would give the wrong impression. It's just there are a lot of open, empty spaces here. And I like that, because you can look around, you know, you can see other buildings, you can see something of the landscape, you can see the autumn is beginning, the autumn colors are starting. It's nice, you can see when people you don't want to meet are coming towards you. But I saw some interesting things. Oh, and by the way, I encountered not 1, but 2 brand new bridges. Now, a new bridge is a big deal. But here in this city, you have 2 side by side. And one of them is very beautiful. The one that's on, I think it's called the Main Street Bridge. Am I right?
Yep.
You know, I have a feeling I'm talking to a whole lot of people, none of whom live in Columbus. Why do I feel that? That's he talking about. Sorry, that was insulting and impertinent. And I take it back. None of you talk like that. Well, maybe 1 or 2 of you do like that. Main Street Bridge. It's beautiful. It was opened 2 years ago. And then I did a kind of circuit around, and I came back over Rich Street Bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And that opened this year. And that's a handsome bridge. And I love the view of downtown. There's one really, I love architecture, and there's one very interesting building, could be sort of turn of the century, 1890, 1900. Pardon? Yeah, when was that built, do you know? Oh.
10 years later, probably in the 1930s.
Oh, it's
The Empire State Building was built
about the same time. Yeah, you're right. You know, I was placing it too early. So that was all lovely. However, I did see other things that were curious. I passed a building, another handsome building. It looked as though it might have been a church or a chapel. Would you mind if I took off my jacket because it's getting warmer? And this is as far as it goes. I have stains on my sweater, but you know what? That makes me human. It makes me like all of you. I will live to regret that remark. If I live, I will regret it. So there was this lovely building, and it had a nice stone plaque on the side of it, and it said, Columbus Cultural Arts Center.
Yep.
Now, I know a lot of cultural centers, and I know a lot of arts centers, but I have never before seen a building called a Cultural Arts Center. It seemed to me to be tautologous. Definition of tautologous? Come on. Pardon? Not really. Thank you very much. Redundant. As Jonathan Frakes used to say, you know, that a tautologist phrase belongs to the Department of Redundancy Department. Jonathan Frakes' father is an English teacher, which is why all of the grammar in Star Trek was so good. Jonathan said, if we make any mistakes, my father is going to be on the phone the morning after the show airs. Excuse me. So, Cultural Arts Centre. I mean, it raises the question, what would be a culture that didn't have arts? Or how can there be arts that are not cultural? You see what I mean? You see where I'm going with this? So it's a little curiosity. Now maybe this is an Ohioism. Anyway, I then passed a car, and it had a bumper sticker on the back. And I am not now going to be offensive in any political way. I promised the organizers that I would not be controversial. And this bumper sticker said, socialism is un-American. Excellent point. Excellent point. Because I bet I'm right in assuming that everyone in this room believes in society.
Yep.
Yeah. Socialism is about society. I mean, forget all the bad connotations of socialism. You know, like the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe and the Cold War and all of that. Forget about that. Socialism is about living in a society. And I just wonder how living in a society can be un-American. That's all I'm going to say. And then further along, this is a long anecdote, but I've had all morning to think about it. I was walking past a rather broken down building. It looked as though it was either going to be pulled down or up for sale. Small building. And you know, I'm looking around because I'm curious and I'm in a new town. And I see the corner of a vehicle peeping out from behind this building. And it looks familiar, the corner of this vehicle. So familiar that I walk all the way around, because I don't want to trespass or anything. I walk all the way around this building. And to my astonishment, I find behind the building with flat tires and in pretty poor condition is not one, but two DeLorean cars. Now, do you know this building I'm talking about in these vehicles? Are they always there? You don't know where they are? Well, they're on Main Street. If you walk down Main Street towards the Main Street Bridge, on the right is this little building, and it's all car parks all the way around. But you go round behind the building, and there are two DeLoreans parked there. Who in this room doesn't know what a DeLorean is or was? Hey, that's fantastic. I mean, fantastic. There's only one person who doesn't know what a DeLorean is. And also, that this person had the courage to put their hand up and... It was a very famous motor car, actually made in Northern Ireland, but by an American company, which was formed in 1975. And they produced a very revolutionary and very futuristic-looking car, which was famously used in the film... Back to the Future! You never saw Back to the Future, did you? You've never heard of the movie, or you've never heard of the car? You've never heard of the movie? And you're at a science fiction? Were you just signing to me then that you brought her against her will? Yeah, no. He's saying yes, you're saying no.
I did all this stuff, but I'm a cheerleader too, so...
Well, that's okay. That's fine. Being a cheerleader is fabulous. Who do you cheerlead for?
University.
Edinburgh University. Redburg. Wittenberg. I thought that was in Germany. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, congratulations. Is it a good school?
Yes.
Yeah. And are you majoring in something then?
Biology.
Biology. Terrific. What are you going to do with your biology degree?
I want to be an occupational therapist.
Fabulous. If my occupation doesn't work out, could you do therapy on me? Thank you. I'm sorry. But anyway, this young woman was the only person in the room. I spent the whole of, what's today, Saturday? The whole of, not the week just gone, but the week before that, kind of presenting a documentary for the BBC about the UK's most famous living racing car driver, whose name is Sir Stirling Moss. Some of you will have heard of him. He's 83. Yeah. No, you talk away. It's good. You're a breath away from language, I know it. And throw that. So I was presenting this documentary, which meant I actually got to drive some of the cars Sir Stirling drove back in the 50s when he was winning races and so forth, including a 1953 Van Wall. Some of you may know what a Van Wall was, single-seater racing car. I drove it on the Aintree circuit, where the Van Wall had won the first, for Stirling Moss, the first British Grand Prix. But on the very last day, a week yesterday, I got to drive a 1955 Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing down a mountain on the Mille route, which was closed down by the Vatican in the 70s because people died every year. Most of them were spectators too, they weren't drivers. It was a very, very dangerous route. This was a race of 1,000 miles, and it happened on public roads and through the center of cities, and they didn't close the roads. And these were drivers ranging from Sir Stirling Moss, the best racing driver in the world, to somebody who just showed up with a car and wanted to drive. And anyway, I drove this fabulous car down a mountain pass, like this, and then on the autostrada, doing about 110, 115 miles an hour, which was nothing like the maximum speed of this car, and it was fabulous. And the biggest compliment I've ever been paid in my life was that Stirling Moss, a racing car driver, fell asleep twice. Not out of fear, but because I hope he just knew he was okay being driven by this crazy actor. Well, I've just about talked long enough for us to introduce our next guest, I think. But if any of you have any questions to ask or comments...
Yeah, who's your favorite nemesis? That young child is a cue in the making.
You mean always interrupting?
Yeah, while Patrick is talking. That was sort of my role, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, your language was marginally better.
There we go. Thank you. So, what do you want to know? We're not on stage very often together.
No, I think this is the second time.
Yeah. Any questions that are particular? Yes.
He has a question. For his sister.
Over both of you guys. I'm a local theater director for a high school, and I just have a question. You guys have some research, but I just saw parts of your Hamlet, which is David Tennant. I saw it online, and I was wondering what the difference is between Shakespeare as a young man compared to doing it now as now.
You're in the now stage.
And how old are you, Sir Patrick? Well, I'm about now. I'll use it.
Soon you'll be falling asleep.
I will. What I found curious about your question was, I watched parts of the Hamlet. I mean, you didn't have the guts to sit down and watch it all the way through. You watched it during your lunch break at work? Instead of playing video games, you pull up this thing and you know, try and watch it all. Beginning to end, it's quite good. Well, look, it's like any job, isn't it? Any job at all, except perhaps those requiring, you know, physical strength and speed and so forth, like athletes, that the longer you do it, really, the better you get at it, John. What do you think? Do you feel that, I mean, make a comparison yourself.
Yes, obviously, yes, you get better, but I was going to say that when I was younger and did Shakespeare, I was much more not knowing what I was getting into. I was just willing to throw myself into it. And now as I get older, I find myself more overwhelmed. So that's how I'm, yeah.
But what about performing in general, acting in general, as opposed to Shakespeare?
Oh, I feel right now that I'm going through a phase where I'm less and less interested. It's always taken for me a tremendous amount of effort and concentration, and it's always been a little scary, and the things which were problematic when I was younger, mostly about being dyslexic, are now coming up. You know, they never change. It's just whether you can handle them. And so it's just gotten to the point that in the last couple of shows that I've done, I've walked away and gone, oh, do I really want to continue to do this? This is just, yeah. And I think it's a phase, because I know in my mind and in my down here that I go, oh yeah, like that. But it feels harder to get up to speed of late.
And is there something that might be replacing that?
I have had a dream of sailing really long distances for a very long time. And I've done Hawaii runs and things like that. And I, just in the last couple of days, I made the decision to probably do the South Sea run. Which means an enormous amount of preparation, which I've already done.
Are we talking solo?
I had said to myself, I'm going to go no matter what, which means you have to prepare for solo. I don't want to do solo. Solo is you're just up. You know, you are up you sleep for 20 minutes at a time for a month. And it's dangerous, but I said, you know, listen, if I get to the end of my life and I haven't done this, I'm going to be pretty upset. So I have to prepare for solo, but there was somebody who got in touch with me, actually one of my son's friends, who said, I'll go with you, just this weekend. And so I go, okay, we're on for April.
That's amazing.
Is something else been there? Because it has been, for the last 3 or 4 years, much more on my mind, that experience, than the experience of what my next show would be. That's become just less and less and less. Because like all of us, we only want to work on good material. And there comes a point at which if you start, there was a time when I just did a lot of material, and some of it was good and a lot of it wasn't so good. But I did it to be able to send my kids to school, to be able to make a living, to be able to do all those things. Now I want to work on kind of tasty morsels, where what you're working on is really something that you're passionate about. And the money is not the issue. So the experience is the issue. And so right now this has been an all-consuming experience, or a desire for me.
Life is wonderful, isn't it? Because I have known John for over 25 years, and I think I had no idea that you were so interested in sailing. And even earlier when we were having a snack, you mentioned, I got this plan to go to the South Seas. You didn't say sail to the South Seas. Single-handed. Sneaky.
Well, the more I say it, the more it's also, I'm using it as a way to make myself do it too. It's sort of scary because I'm actually have the facility to do it, and I mean the equipment to do it, so, yeah.
Well, watch this space, folks. John de Lancie. When you say South Seas, I mean, it brings to mind Joseph Conrad and Robert
The Marquesas,
yeah, okay.
to the Tuamotus, which is the largest island, coral archipelago in the world, coming into Tahiti, then on to Fiji, and then back all the way up through, right in the middle of the Pacific, all the way back up to the northern latitudes, coming into the San Juan. It'll be 2 years.
You see, when I listen to that, when I hear John talking, we are at the moment in very different situations, I think, because your question about, how is it different now? Just as John said, when I was 15, I played Prospero in The Tempest. Without a thought in my head, I just went on and played Prospero, fearlessly. I played Oedipus in Oedipus Rex, fearlessly. And then I went to drama school, and I got scared, because I realized how much I didn't know. But now for me, in the last few years, something has happened. I don't know why it has come about, but whereas for many, many years, including the years of Star Trek, the early years anyway, I cared too much and I worried too much and was too anxious about everything and wondering if I was competent, gifted in any way at all. I mean, it's a well-known story. I didn't unpack my suitcase during the shooting of the pilot of Star Trek because I was so sure they would fire me during, and I could have been out of Los Angeles in half an hour if I had to. But now, the fact is, when it comes to the work that I do, and I hope you will forgive this remark, but I don't give a damn. I have more fun working than I've ever had in my life, and I enjoy it today more than I ever had in my life. And although I am not scrabbling for work like I used to, I have a project, a theatre project that doesn't begin for nearly a year, but already, I get this little thrill whenever I think about this next job starting. So it's interesting, isn't it? But I have met others of our profession who, just like you, have reached that point where they say, either this isn't enough anymore, or I need to move on, or something.
Yeah, and I think that I'm going to get through it, because I think that once I've done this, I will come back as sort of the wizened old man who, and the sea, I will have, and it does, I think most actors, there are a few that I know that didn't have this experience, but most actors start out thinking that they have hoodwinked the audience and will certainly be found out. I remember the first time in which I did when I came out to Los Angeles, I had I came out from New York with a movie, and they brought me in. I did the scene, and then I was asked to come and talk with the producers. And I thought I was going to be fine. And they played that game with me. Well, John, I go, yeah. I mean, my mind was, it went into, you were the funniest thing, you were so great, we really love having you on the show, and what have you. I didn't even hear that. I was still paralyzed from the fact that they had told me that I was out and gone. And I mean, and we experienced that, and it takes a long, long time for most of us to get to the point where, but at that point, I think what happens too is that you begin to find yourself, and once you find yourself, you do a better job. You just end up doing a better job. You know, you can't be everything. I remember thinking, when I was I used to listen to a tremendous amount of records of Shakespeare, and I was very, very fortunate in that the high school I went to started out with Henry V as a 14-year-old, and ended with Hamlet as an 18-year-old. But had and was told, well, then I went through a phase where I go, I can't play these things because now I know how you're supposed to play them, and I can't do that. And then that actually held me back. I was just too scared of the experience. Another question, yes.
This is a question for Patrick Stewart. I have two. The first one, is there a possible chance that you will make a cameo in the X-Men First Class sequel?
I am not aware that there is an X-Men First Class sequel.
Portray somebody who was in a wheelchair.
No. No, it was an interesting challenge because the kind of physical tools that we have to use when we act, some of them were taken away from me, and I just found that interesting and a challenge. The one difference was that when the assistant director would say, okay everybody, we got that, we're going to take a 10-minute break, everybody would sit down, but I would stand up. Not at all. You know, we're getting close to the time when I am going to leave you in the tender sailing hands of John de Lancie. Yeah, oh yes. But I promised I would not be controversial, John. But given that Ohio is such an important location in this upcoming election, I just want to do a little tiny poll. Now, I am not going to ask anybody how they're going to vote. Not that at all. But I do have a couple of questions, because I may never be in this situation again. And I'm English, and you know we're interested. And what happens here in the United States affects us in a big way over there. How many of you here who can vote know how they will? I'm not saying for which party or president you will vote. How many of you know how you will vote? How many of you are undecided? Wow. Yeah, wow. Far, I mean a handful. Far fewer than I had expected. And far fewer than what the media leads us to believe might be the situation here in Ohio. Yes, of course. Why are you wearing those things on your face? Another question, John? I mean, now I see the hands, but without seeing the hands, it was not good. One more question?
Yes, Patrick. I'd like to ask the three things that you've done: movies and series and theater. Which one do you like the best? I like theater the best myself.
That's great. Yeah. I always answer in the words of Ingmar Bergman, who, as you know, was a great great film director, one of the handful of greatest of the 20th century. But what maybe a lot of people don't know is that he ran a theatre company all his life. He directed in the theatre and he directed films. He was asked this question and he said, I love cinema and making movies, but the theatre is my life. And that's how I feel. I think I'm going to leave the bridge to you, John. Thank you. You've been great.
All right. Questions?
How much was
Yes.
improvised?
Quick,
How
John.
much was improvised?
What's that?
How much was improvised between you and Patrick Stewart?
Very little of it was improvised. They had a lot of, there were just a lot of pressures not to do that. Yeah.
I know you, Shakespeare, I love Shakespeare too. I was wondering, what's your favorite Shakespeare play? And how much of Shakespeare has gotten in with Star Trek Next Generation? Because I've noticed within the very first seasons, like there were some Shakespeare moments between you and Patrick.
My favorite Shakespeare was Henry IV, Part 1 and 2. It has Falstaff and Pistol and Bardolph and Henry V, or well, who will become Henry Howell. I think that what happened is that they recognized that with both of us we had abilities in that area, obviously with Patrick and then somewhat with me, I guess. And so they sort of wrote to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a son who's 19 years old who is also dyslexic. He is now studying to be a filmmaker. Do you have any advice? Because dyslexia really is.
Right. The question is that this mother has a son who's 19 years old who is dyslexic, and is there anything? And he's studying to be a filmmaker. And is there anything that I would have to say about that? One of the things in which I've learned is that I tend to see the world a little differently, and perhaps he does too. Okay. I saw a program on a documentary of late on dyslexia. It's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. It was a painful and somewhat teary experience for me, because I found myself watching people who I went, oh my God, I know what that feels. What that feels. In the area of reading, particularly, reading really only came about in the last 5,000 years or so. Maybe a little, but for the most part, around 5,000 years. For people today who are really, really brilliant at it, apparently they were able to show that there's a particular part of your brain that seems to be able to take all of that information and it deals with it right there. For the rest of us, we'll put it this way, for the person who's dyslexic, that the brain is firing on all sorts of different areas. So it's effortful. But in the process of firing, now they didn't say this in the documentary, but I extrapolated from that. In the process of firing from different parts of the brain, I think I'm picking up other like signals, as it were. I am very, very good at visualizing things. You know, when I direct operas and what have you, I can see the whole thing in my mind. There are times that when I go to prepare a show, I will go downstairs in my office, in the middle of the day. It's a wonderful life when you consider that part of my job is that I turn off all the lights, turn on the music, and close my eyes and just lay there on the sofa and work. Visualizing all sorts of things. Those of us who have this will never go away. And the fact is that he, as I have created all sorts of ways of workarounds, and he'll be just fine. He'll just be fine, you know. And you kind of stay away from the areas I remember for years it was so difficult for me to read, and just to learn how to read, and then reading out loud. My first girlfriends, my 3 first girlfriends, all had the pleasure of going out with me if they would listen to me read for a half an hour at the top end of the date. I just have to, I say, Betsy, I'm sorry, but you have to, would you just listen to me read? So I just tried to figure out all sorts of ways to get around it. Yes?
Hi, I was just wondering, what were the challenges of having to play an omnipotent character?
Well, what you do is that you don't really play an omnipotent character. Because if you play an omnipotent character, or let's say a king, you know, most actors will do this, like that, you know, they'll be kingly. But then after that wears off in 10 seconds, the question is what do you do? What does a king do? Because the audience is given the word, they're a king, or they're the doctor. How do you play doctor? Well, you don't really play doctor. You play what the doctor is doing, saving somebody's life, doing surgery, you know, what have you. So what I did is that I'm knowing this, because I've been around for a while, I went, okay, I am an omnipotent being who is too stupid to know it. I'm an omnipotent being I am an all-powerful being with clay feet. So now I had something to do. I could play somebody who was, very sure of themselves, but underneath was a mess of insecurities and what have you. And that's what creates this texture. Okay, next.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi. I just finished playing this game, Quantum Conundrum, that you did a bunch of voice work for, and I was wondering how you came across that role, how you were approached for it, and how interesting the character was to you to do just the voice work.
I was walking, in terms of approach, I was walking down the street. All of a sudden, 3 guys jumped out. They put a hood over my head. They stuck me in the back of the car, a van I think it was, drove me to a secret location, and made me do that voice work. I got a call asking whether I would like to be in the show, and I said okay. And I didn't know anything more about it. I mean, nobody knows about these things. I mean, when I did Star Trek, they called me up and they said, we'd like you to audition for Star Trek. I went, Star Trek? I mean, didn't they already do Star Trek? So we walk into these things sort of, it's like walking into a room, not even knowing whether it's a big or small room, with clearly the lights off. And you just kind of go, oh, where am I? So that's how it is. And it turns out I've had people come up to me and say that they enjoy it, right?
That's the reason I bought the game.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, yes?
Were you also kidnapped by bronies to make you work on My Little Pony?
Oh, was I kidnapped by bronies to make me work on My Little Pony? I got a call, just not unlike Quantum Conundrum, and the call was, do you want to do, and it's for this amount of money at this time of the day, this time of the week, would you be free? And I said, well, send me the script. And I looked at the script, and it was a good material. Okay, it was good. It was a good script. So I went, sure. So I went there, and they, oh, hello, Mr. Lancie, hello, John. It's so nice of you to be able to know like that. And I'm walking in, and I'm mostly concerned about, oh my God, I hope that my eyes aren't going to start flipping around on me. And, not too much, enough coffee, but not enough. But too much coffee doesn't work. At the end of the day, who knows, and stuff like that. And I knocked it out. Boom, boom, boom. I had prepared it the night before, and I worked it. Oh, one thing about your son, what have you, is that I used to say to myself, and ultimately to students also who had this, I would say, hey, listen, Maybe it takes us a little longer at the top of the morning, in the beginning of the morning, to put our pants on. But it's what you do with the rest of the day. Okay? So that's it. So that meant for me, I just had to work harder. I just have to work harder. You know, when I learn lines, it's harder for me. And Patrick is a brilliant line learner. He's brilliant at it. For me, it's agonizing. But my wife, who is also brilliant at it, says, yes, but you know, John, the difference between you and me, she was saying, is that when you have learned your lines, you are completely full-blown. You're ready to go. You take the entire process along with you. That's how you work. For me, or for a lot of people like that, they only bring their lines, so they become wonderful line rememberers, but they haven't brought the whole process with them. But so, okay, so in any case, so I went there, I did it, I prepared the night before, I did it, and that was it. And then 3 months later, I walked down to my computer and I'm inundated, I mean overwhelmed by all of these emails. And I called up to my wife and I said, and I read a couple of them and I went, oh my God. I said, Marnie, what do you know about My Little Pony? She said, well, it's a cartoon that you voiced about 3 months ago. And it's for little girls. I said, well, let me tell you something. These aren't little girls that are writing. So I went through the exact same thing that everybody goes through. Like, you know, I was like, well, you know, they're rather flamboyant and they're, you know, all this type of stuff. And I went and I told a friend of mine who came over that night for dinner. And I told him, he sort of chortled about it. Oh, it's sort of weird, isn't it? Yeah. And he said, well, we ought to do, and he's a documentary film guy, and he said, we ought to do a documentary. And I said, no, I don't want to. And then I came to a convention, and a bunch of kids, essentially, I can call you that since I'm about 40 years older than you are, most of you, came up to me, and they introduced themselves as bronies. And I went, oh, well, I recognize these people. I recognize them as being the beginning of what Star Trek was like. What I heard Star Trek was like, because I came in as second generation, next generation. And I went, I said, they're great. They have, I don't know, there's such a smile on their face, and there's such a wonderful sense of the possibility that things could be. And they go, well, it's about friendship and about being kind and considerate, and I don't know, it's terrific. And then my friend sent me an article from Fox News, which was, bronies are all a bunch of homosexuals who stay at home on food stamps and on disability so as to be able to watch a cartoon show. And I went, that's really wrong. I mean, that's wrong on many different levels. It's just not right. And it was done to put a spin on it, and it was one of those really surface spins that made fun of people at their expense to be able to, and so that's when I called them up and I said, okay, I'm in. Let's do this documentary. These people need some space from this type of dishing. They just need some space. And how much do you think it would cost? And he said, well, maybe 60, probably 80, but maybe 60 to be able to cover a convention like this, a 2-day convention. You have, 2 or 3 cameras, and then the editing, and getting the people there, and stuff like that. And he said, I want to do it through Kickstarter, and I said, be my guest, whatever. You're the producer, you handle it. And the community offered $340,000. So we really, we would have taken it seriously at 60, but we really took it seriously and we said, okay, how is this money going to be used? And we said, well, let's see how big this community is. Well, we sent teams to Israel, to Germany, to England. We've included all sorts of different people involved. We've been able to add animation to it, which these things cost a great deal of money. I had no idea. And so we are now in the post period, and I'm hoping that certainly by Christmas, that we'll have a show that so many people wrote us and said, is this something that I'm going to be able to show my parents? Is this something I'm going to be able to show my friends? Is this something that I'm going to be proud of? And we're not doing an expose. We are doing a mirror of a new group who is willing to brave the ridicule of being 20-year-old guys who are watching a show for 10-year-old girls. Because there's something special in that show that makes them feel good about, and take those ideas of how you behave towards each other in terms of being friendly, and to apply them to themselves, and then ultimately to apply them to the world. And I feel at this stage in our history that we really need something like that, given the acrimony and the bitterness that seems to be going on. So that's why I lent myself to this project. Last question. I'll be the judge of that. Okay, yes, sir.
First off, your role as Q in TNG was fantastic. I'm a really big fan of the show Breaking Bad, and your role in that was also great. Could you just talk a little bit about your experience of Breaking Bad and what you thought of the whole process in general?
Breaking Bad is one of those shows, and there aren't very many of them. You could tell when you were on Star Trek that you were on a special show. A show that was watched by a lot of people, and a show that you really felt the need to come up to the level. Breaking Bad was the same thing. And there you saw it in the writing, in the care and detail in the filming process, and it's all shown. It's all on the screen afterwards. My part was sort of a difficult part. I am usually hired to play the verbal asshole who really, because interestingly enough, about going back, the whole afternoon is about the two of us here with this is that the irony is that while words were my bugaboo as a kid, that's become my profession, and I'm known for my ability to be a wordsmith. That's perhaps, overdeveloping one muscle, but that's what I'm known for. I'm known for being able to come in and give real. And in this case, my job was to just feel and just to react. And I played the father of a girl who's a drug addict. And probably the most gratifying thing about that is that I've had so many people in their 20s come up to me and say, in sort of a private way, you made me understand what my parents were going through. I said, oh, so has anything? He goes, oh yeah, no more. So I go, wow, that's the You know, you could have had this. I know that because I've had kids, and I also know friends who've had some real problems with their children in that area. And you can do this and this and this all you want. And sometimes it just needs something coming in like that. And it came in on the side, and so I was really happy about it. And Breaking Bad is a brilliant show and a brilliant writers, and of course Cranston is really. Okay, next. Thank you.
I'm very curious, when you guys were working on Star Trek, did you ever consider having Q break the fourth wall with the audience? For example, I'll give you context. The very last episode of The Next Generation, my favorite scene between Q and Picard, where Q tells Picard, your real journey, in a sense, is not just your trek through the stars, but exploring the possibilities of existence. I'm wondering whether you might also say something like, you know, Jean-Luc, we're both actors, I just happen to know that I'm one.
Well, actually, I did break the fourth wall, and you never got to see it. In one of the episodes, I'm in a Robin Hood sort of outfit, or what, you remember that? And my henchman comes in. It's just a scene where he comes in, the camera's there. He comes in and he says, tomorrow will be a good day. There will be a wedding and an execution. And then he leaves. And I watch him leave, and I turn to the camera and I go, but I thought all weddings were executions. They went, no, you can't do that, no. But they've played it many times and said, all right, well, a couple more. What time is it? Let's see. Am I keeping you from your... just a person there, and then you're just...
Sure,
yes.
all right. Sort of trailing on the last question, I was wondering about the last episode of All Good Things. I enjoyed at the beginning you were talking about how it was very serendipitous when you started out with Star Trek. It was sort of free reign. You never knew where you were going to go. But when you got to All Good Things, did you like the circular storyline that they made with you and Patrick Stewart when the test of humanity was completed? And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the
yeah, quickly. It's probably my favorite episode in terms of, I didn't have very much to do. I maybe had 5 or 6 scenes in it. I have to say that the word anomaly must have come up a bazillion times. But I liked it because it was, for me, it gave me an opportunity to either polish up a facet that I had already done or to etch a new one. And which you know, in all of Star Trek, I've only done 9 episodes. So I'm really, time-wise, a peripheral character. But in terms of the general scope of the show, I seem to be considered like I'm sitting in on all the board meetings. But, so I just thought it was a very good show that ended a really extraordinary run. Yes, sir. Thank you.
My thought was, I wondered what your viewpoint was, perspective between the 3 shows, between Next Generation, Deep Space Nine.
What was my perspective between Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager? I think the best exchanges were, frankly, between Patrick and I. The problem was with Kate Mulgrew. Kate and I had known each other for many years, and what have you, and they were so concerned that Kate would somehow play it, or mostly that the audience would think that there was some sort of thing going on between Picard, or between Q and Janeway. And I remember at the time I said, okay, that's the 900 or 800 pound gorilla in the room. I understand that. So why are we ignoring that? Why don't we play that and get that out of the way rather than go into other areas which are not quite as weighty and don't have quite as much tension attached to it. They didn't. With Patrick and I, it was like 2 alphas who were going to like, who's going to do it, who's going to do it, who's going to do it. That's right. And in Deep Space Nine, I didn't think it was a very it was a particularly good show, story-wise, because I think the best things for Q, the character, were big philosophical issues, not whether, you know, Q loves Vosh. Who cares? All right, another one. Okay, yeah. This is really the last one.
What kind of boat do you have?
I have a sailboat, the Hans Christian.
How long? What size?
It's 43 at the water, 50 overall. Are you a sailor?
I love this boat.
Yeah. Okay, one more question. One more. Yes, go ahead. Yes. No? Yes.
Of all three sets that you were on for the 3 series, which one did you have the most fun on?
Oh, well, I think I answered that by saying it was Next Gen. Okay, yes.
Emily's birthday day, she couldn't be here. Could you please say happy birthday, Emily?
Happy birthday, Emily. How about if we all say it? Happy birthday, Emily. All right, thanks a lot.
Ohio's 501st Legion, Vader's Hand, if memory serves, who is now offering free coloring pages. Note, if you ever think these are not the droids you're looking for, this will be your job. What are you driving at? How about a black Green Lantern? Black? He could be Chinese. If you want to make him Chinese, fine. I don't care. I really don't.
I'm laughing more than anybody. I've got that Seth MacFarlane t-shirt of a big old fat Superman with the S on it. I wear it. I'm not gonna lie. I don't wear it in public because
I just can't think past me. Drawings, I've seen cartoons, but you mean in the movies? No, I can't think of it.